In 2018, Apple sold nearly 220 million iPhones alone. In the same year, their employees at their largest manufacturer in China would make only $400 a month, which is about a third of the cost of a single iPhone. I understand that I'm making a big claim in this video, that Apple is destroying our planet. And to explain that to you, there are a lot of things we're going to have to walk through, and you're going to have to be patient with me to understand. But I promise by the end, you will have learned something very empowering as a consumer. To understand this, you have to understand the entire supply chain of creating an iPhone and what a supply chain even is. We're starting with the supply chain because that's where the beginning of your iPhone begins, at the very top of their supply chain, as opposed to where most people start when they talk about the issues with tech, which is e-waste, because it's the most obvious in-our-face thing. There is a huge issue with e-waste in the United States and all across the world because we export our tech recycling to other underdeveloped countries that don't have anything to do with those resources. E-waste in and of itself is a huge issue, with companies like Apple selling 220 million of just one single device that they sell in a year. We have to think about where all of that goes at the end of that product's life cycle. And as it turns out, less than 1 in every 5 devices actually goes to a recycling facility. But like I said, this video is not focusing on just the waste that comes out of this, but as well as the waste that starts this. According to the American Ceramic Society, an 8-ounce iPhone requires about 500 pounds of raw materials to create. That means for every iPhone that you can hold in your hand, somewhere along the way, 500 pounds of materials had to be extracted from our earth and then manufactured through a very intensive process to be turned into your device. That's a lot of resources. And when I tell you 500 pounds of materials are required to create your single iPhone, you might picture machinery. In your head, you might think mining facilities that have big bulldozers or big sort of machinery to do this. And that is in fact not the case in most parts of the world. These huge tech companies and their supply chains start with human hands. And many of these scenarios, people in underdeveloped countries are mining for these materials with their hands in very unsafe conditions for very unethical wages. Aluminum, carbon, iron, silicone, copper, cobalt, nickel, you name it, people are mining that for these huge tech companies for pennies on the dollar. While Apple claims to be making strides for their supply chain to eradicate unethical practices and environmental harm, their supply chain remains top secret and the least transparent of all these tech giants, with undefined terms and attempting to gain brownie points for not using materials that have been banned for decades. It's safe to say that Apple's customers are basically letting them get away with murder. There's one overarching issue that is exacerbating all of these problems. All of the materials we're extracting from the earth that are not renewable resources, and all of the e-waste that are filling up our landfills and people in underdeveloped countries are being left to deal with. There's one underlying issue that's making both of those worse, and that is a practice called planned obsolescence. Planned obsolescence can take a few different forms. One of those most common things are to make repairs very difficult. Back in the day, you could buy an item and it wasn't expected that the next 18 months you'd have to turn around and dish out another $1,000 to replace it. It also wasn't an expectation that you would lease devices that you would only be able to use for a couple years. So the first way planned obsolescence makes its way into our lives are by not being able to repair your devices or making those repairs more costly than buying the new item outright.
This is going to cost more than $1,000. So
to fix it entirely will cost more than $1,000?
Yeah. I mean, that cost is very close to the cost of buying a new computer.
So this is a MacBook Pro that the Apple Store said would cost $1,200 to fix and wasn't worth doing.
All right, let's take a look and see if that's true. See the pin that's sticking out?
Okay.
So that pin is actually most likely the pin for the backlight. And as you can see, it's probably not making contact because it's bent outwards. And I got my set of tweezers over here, and I'm just gonna try to push that back into the slot and try to get it back into its groove. Let's plug this back in and hope for the best. All right, as you can see, we've got an Apple and we have a light.
So it fixed.
Yeah, now...
That took you like 1.5 minutes?
Maybe.
Another way planned obsolescence shows up is shortened life cycles, and we also see it done through subtle marketing tactics to make you think that you need the newer devices for their minor upgrades. Apple has been one of the most accused companies of planned obsolescence for years, and in 2017 they finally admitted to doing so.
Well, meanwhile, we're awaiting a decision to see whether Apple will face a class action lawsuit.
After it admitted to slowing down older iPhones.
The tech giant says it's done to save battery life.
Apple's admission that it was intentionally slowing down the performance of older iPhones triggered news reports around the world.
Forum Reddit complained their iPhones were running slow.
It looked like a case of planned obsolescence, an effort to pressure consumers into buying new products when they didn't have to.
Apple admitted to slowing down older devices, and they didn't outright say that it was in order to entice you to buy the newest and latest gadget, but one can assume. This led to customers being really upset and having an overall really negative experience using their phones at a much slower rate than they were used to, or their phones just completely shutting off on them when their battery wasn't dead yet. Apple didn't disclose this to their customers, so many of their customers may have thought, well, my phone is a piece of crap now, time to go buy the next upgrade. When in reality, all these customers really needed to do was update their battery. But of course, Apple didn't come out and outright say that until these allegations were lobbed at them. Actions like this have actually been made illegal in France, and so the people of France started coming to Apple with all these issues, and lo and behold, charges were pressed against them. When Apple admitted to slowing down our iPhones, people were pissed, but that didn't stop 220 million people from supporting them with their money the very next year in 2018. And while that fiasco may not have changed a lot of consumers' minds, I hope this video will. Yes, I made this video to come for Apple. Yes, I think that they have very unethical and unsustainable business practices. So do I personally still use an Apple iPhone? I do. But I always buy my tech second hand, and that's actually what I wanted to close up this video saying to you guys. How can we solve this problem? Well, number one, stop giving your money to the company who is destroying our planet and taking advantage of human beings to the fullest extent. Think back to elementary school when we learned the 3 R's: reduce, reuse, and recycle, and start purchasing your iPhones secondhand. I have a blog post linked in the description that I did with all of the places you can purchase iPhones secondhand. You can get warranties on them, you can make sure that they are good quality, you can read reviews, and you can get them repaired. It's very important to think in the meantime, while Apple is sorting through their terrible supply chain and the way that they're destroying our planet through extracting all of these resources, planned obsolescence, and e-waste, that we don't give them our money. It's silly to think that we can shut down a multi-billion-dollar company. Not to mention, Apple is so ingrained into our culture and into our personal lives. My iPhone personally has all of my photos on it, I run my business from my phone, and not to mention, all of my music is on there. Everything is integrated so simply. It is a product that I love, but I personally do not support their business practices. Therefore, I currently am choosing not to give my money to this company and to purchase my electronics secondhand. And in the meantime, you can tell Apple how you feel. This is truly a product that you use and you love, and you wish you could support their practices, but you can't. Tell them on social media, write them emails, write them letters, tell their employees, do anything you can to demand transparency within their supply chain, to hold them accountable to doing truly sustainable things with their materials and paying their workers fair wages, not just exporting their pollution to their factories in China and not just paying people in China really low wages just because you can. Also, keep in mind that the most sustainable device that you have is already in your pocket, so make sure the device you have will last you as long as you can. Take really good care of it and make sure that you don't have to upgrade sooner than before just because you didn't take as good of care of your electronics as you could have. So be sure to stop supporting these large companies with your dollar by purchasing secondhand. Make sure you're telling them that you love their products but you don't support their business practices. You can tweet them on social media, share this video with them, or just share this video with your friends and family to let them know why they shouldn't be supporting the Apple products, why you shouldn't get caught up with the mentality of having to purchase the latest and greatest release from Apple, and why you should use my blog post to research the companies where you can buy these items secondhand from trusted retailers, and you don't have to support Apple and their terrible practices as they currently stand. So thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I hope you learned something new. Don't forget to share this video with Apple and with your friends and family. And remember, until next time, you cannot do all the good that the world needs, but the world needs all the good that you can do. Bye, guys.